debate, but it's that simple. So it comes down to what Ralph was asking. It comes down to how do you pay for that safety net? Now, for 7 years, we saved customers $700 million. But $700 million, did I remember my number right? Okay, that would have paid for a Scarborough plus some, but it was all given to customers. So you have these time period differences where the market changes, and when the market changes again, how do you get the safety net? This last week, we were the safety net. The generation was a safety net. In a cold winter period, it's a safety net. It's not just a safety net, it's a reliability enhancer. It also is helping New England reliability. It's also helping fuel diversity. I think that the state would be foolish to ever give that up. I'm obviously not an advocate of divestiture. Divestiture will not save customers one nickel. And it takes away a safety net, so it just, to me, makes no sense. But, I mean, if a plant is not useful, you retire it, period. But if the plants are useful, they're useful for customers. And as I just showed you, 100% of our plants were useful and running last week.
Well, what happens to that usefulness once you bring 1,200 megawatts of power down to Canada? I mean, that's essentially how much power your fleet produces right now.
Yes.
So what happens to those assets?
Nothing. Nothing happens. When, I shouldn't say nothing, but it's not an either or. That's I'm trying to get people to understand the market. So this chart that Martin has, this is the one on the left is sort of a stack. It's sort of a dispatch stack. In other words, the loads go higher or generation doesn't become, you start using the stuff, you go from bottom to top, right?
Every day that happens.
Every day, every hour that happens. So when you bring Canadian Power in, 1,200 megawatts, you're pushing the top of the stack down. Okay, you follow me? You're pushing the top of the stack down. About 90% of the time, your natural gas plants are not running anymore. Because they can't compete. I mean, the price is too high from the hydro plant. So most of the time, this is why we say, when you inject 1,200 megawatts of hydroelectricity, you're displacing natural gas for the most part, and you're reducing carbon by up to 5 million tons a year. That's physically what happens, and you lower your prices in the market too, because you have a lower price, but in the market that brings the market price up. That doesn't necessarily have any effect on our plants, because when you get to a cold period, whatever, they're going to run just like they ran last week. When you get to a hot period, they're going to run just like they ran last week. Okay, because we're not the ones on the margin. We're very, very infrequently on the margin. Now, during last week, you would have those oil plants would probably not have been 14%. It might have been 10%. So during that week, you would be knocking down oil. And maybe our Newington wouldn't run, or maybe it wouldn't run as much, but it also runs on gas, by the way. So yes, you would have certain plants that are knocked down in those periods, and that's the benefit. I mean, that's the price benefit, and that's the environmental benefit. But it's not a one-to-one. It's not a those 1,200 megawatts from Hydro-Quebec are not PSNH's Hydro-Quebec. Those are New England's megawatts, and it's a New England market. So people have this misnomer that it's direct displacement. It's not.
But they also have the argument is that bringing that power down will weaken the region's ability to develop homegrown renewable sources.
And I would encourage you to read the article that was in, Commonwealth magazine.
I emailed it to.
Yeah,
You got it?
because I had a long conversation, and the fellow who wrote that article, I thought is very accurate. Talked to many people around. That comes down to policy. It doesn't displace anything unless a policymaker says it does. Because just take New Hampshire as an example. You bring in the 1,200 megawatts, the renewable portfolio standard in New Hampshire does not change at all. Okay? In the New Hampshire renewable portfolio standard, that renewable portfolio standard could be met from Maine, New York, Massachusetts, Connecticut. It just so happens that PSNH has advocated and pushed for New Hampshire development. Like our Calder Wood plant in Portsmouth, like the Leinster Wind, like the Burgess Biomass plant in Berlin. Those are all PSNH initiated projects. So we say you want in-state development, we'll help you do that. We've done it. We're going to easily meet our portfolio requirement. New England will not. Now there's been also wind development in New Hampshire that goes to others. Okay, and that's because there are renewable portfolio standards in other states. So if the state says that we're going to meet our renewable portfolio standard by hydro it can still meet a standard, it can still hit the standard, and the standard is to have green energy. But if you want 40%, make it 40%. In other words, it's how you design the portfolio standard that answers that question that you asked. If you design one to replace the other, then yes, you will replace. If you design it to be separate, it will be separate. And New Hampshire and all the other states have designed them to be separate. Connecticut has made a change recently. So I'll give you an example. New Hampshire has created 4 markets, and plus renewables that aren't in any market. Our own hydro is not in the market. It's renewable, but it's not part of an RPS. And New Hampshire has said, well, we've got 4 distinct markets. We got class 1, we got class 2, which is only solar. So biomass, wind cannot be in that class. And in Massachusetts, they have something called the Green Communities Act. In Massachusetts, there's very specific solar requirements, and there's an immense amount of solar being developed in Massachusetts. Because they set a policy, has nothing to do with hydro, has nothing to do with Northern Pass, because they want more solar, and they're getting more solar. They want more wind, they're getting more wind. So that it's a red herring for people to say that one is displacing the other, because it's already been proven that New Hampshire and Massachusetts, 2 examples, have created specific markets for in-state development. And if they want to change that policy, they can. But that's not the way it stands today.
Was NU
So
or
it's-
Northern Pass involved in the change in Connecticut where they designated renewables had to be fulfilled by a large hydro power project from Canada?
You know, obviously, Connecticut Light and Power was consulted and there were discussions, but the reason, and I tried to explain this to that reporter and others, each state has its own situation.
Right.
You know, in Connecticut, their situation is they don't have any potential for wind. They have no potential for offshore wind. Because they don't have what New Hampshire has as far as infrastructure for timbering and logging, they have very, very little ability to do biomass. But yet Connecticut is like Massachusetts and New Hampshire, Rhode Island. Connecticut wants 25% or so renewable in the future. They have done very extensive studies with engineers and consultants, and the studies have shown that they have a huge gap between what they want and what they can do domestically, what they can do in their state. You know, they also see that their needs are being met by wood plants in New Hampshire, a part of them. And they're saying that's not providing us with any benefit, and it's higher cost. So Connecticut looks at it, how do I meet my, and each state is unique, how do I meet my requirements to benefit my state when I don't have resources? And that's why they support large hydro. And that could be from the Maritimes, New Brunswick, it can be from anything. And it's very parochial. You know, it has to do with, and you know, it fits the Canadians' view. So the Canadians obviously, all of Canada, not just Quebec, because it fits in their view that they're producing renewable, and why isn't New England accepting it? So it fits their view, it's very logical to them. It's logical to the state of Connecticut because they don't have any other way of meeting their standard other than some very expensive, aggressive things that would just drive them out of business. Their rates will be so high. So it has nothing to do with, I like this or that. It has to do with they don't have much in the way of choice unless they give up their goal to be renewable, and they don't want to. So I admire them for that. Massachusetts says, we have potential for solar and we're willing to pay for it. We have potential for off-wind. It's very controversial. We're willing to go that way. You know, and then you go to Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont to some extent. That's where most of the wind potential is, particularly Maine. And so that's why you get a lot of developers going to those states and saying, okay, you got this New England requirement, you guys can't meet it, so we need some more of that to help meet it. So it really is all driven by policy. And so people try to make it more than what it is. New England wants to have 25%. I just gave you the number on wind. I will tell you, people are ignoring the question, how do you get there? Nobody knows how to get there. And so Connecticut, because they did the studies that others haven't done, is saying, well, this is how we're going to help get there.
Do you foresee lobbying New Hampshire to adjust its renewable policy so that a project like Northern Pass can qualify as renewable?
I don't see it. It's not on my agenda. It's not on our company's agenda. I mean, New Hampshire has spoken. You know, I've given you at least 3 examples of where our company personally has taken the state's direction and advocated for and gone through some great difficulty to help make happen, major renewable projects in New Hampshire. And those projects that I mentioned, the Burgess Biomass, our own hydro plant that we enhance up in Berlin, New Hampshire, plus the Lemster Wind Farm, we're in very good shape to meet the portfolio requirements. I think we're the best